What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be doing something that I haven't done a lot on this channel before, and that is a ranking video ranking each starfighter in Star Wars Squadrons from worst to best. These are always a lot of fun to make, and generally you guys do seem to enjoy them, so even though they'll never really be a super regular thing on the channel, there is the chance I may do some more of these down the line. Now, one thing I did want to say before I start this is obviously this is all just my own opinion. There's really no objective best or worst in terms of the starfighters, as it does just come down to which classes you prefer and which ones suit your playstyle the most. So I dare say that like 95% of you will completely disagree with these rankings, but if that is the case, then that's absolutely fine, and to be honest, that is to be expected with this type of video. I should also mention that obviously the game is only very new still, and so I have no doubt that if I were to do this again in a month from now, then it would probably be completely different to how this list is at the moment. But anyway, with all of that out of the way, guys, let's get stuck right into it. So coming in at the number 8 spot, we have the support ship for the Imperials, which is of course the TIE Reaper. Now, this was the starfighter that I really wanted to try and main heading into the launch of the game. Not only does it look absolutely awesome, but generally I love playing the sort of support medic type of role in most multiplayer games that I play. So when I first saw the Reaper, I had a feeling it would definitely be one of my favourites. I have still been trying to use it a lot, and honestly, if you play your role with the Reaper, then don't get me wrong, it is extremely useful for the team. But personally, I do just feel as though it's a lot weaker than most of the other starfighters in the game, especially when it comes to its survivability. Obviously, the support class isn't designed to deal a lot of damage or to be super maneuverable or anything like that. Its main goal is obviously just to help your teammates by keeping them alive or hiding them from the enemy targeting systems and stuff like that, but in my opinion it's just almost too well suited to that role and not well enough suited to the other roles like getting kills or just its own survivability. Now, a great Reaper pilot can definitely be the difference between a win and a loss. However, I do just think that you have to almost sacrifice every other area of the game in order to be great with the Reaper, and so for me it does unfortunately come in at the number 8 spot on the list. Moving on to number 7, and again this is the support ship, this time for the New Republic, with that being the U-Wing. Honestly, pretty much everything that I said about the TIE Reaper does relate to the U-Wing as well. It feels relatively weak in essentially every single area other than just team support. Now, both of these do have shields, but at least as far as I can tell, the shields on the U-Wing do seem to be a little bit stronger. Maybe that's just in my head. So whether you're trying to do some more damage or just stay alive longer to help keep your teammates supplied, then those shields do just feel like they're sort of a little bit better for helping you not die as fast as the Reaper does. With all of that being said though, it is still extremely hard to use in my opinion, and once again, despite being pretty pivotal in the right situation, the skill gap for these two support ships is definitely a contributing factor to their spots in these rankings. Moving on to number 6, and for me this one is the X-Wing. Now, it pains me to say this because I actually love the X-Wing, and to be honest I think it might be one of my top 3 favourite starfighters to use in the game, but in my opinion it just lacks a little bit in almost every single area. I feel like at times its damage output is just not the best compared to some of the other starfighters in the game, and a lot of that does come down to just which components you're running, of course, so that can be fixed to some extent, but either way I do just feel like it's a little bit less powerful than the A-Wing or the Y-Wing. The other thing is that it obviously doesn't really have any strengths either. It's essentially just an all-around decent starfighter rather than being really strong in any specific area, and so that is also an area that I think it sort of lacks in, that it doesn't really have any specific purpose. Now, that all kind of makes it sound pretty bad in a way, but like I said, I think it is one of my personal favourites, and it is far from being a bad class to use. The difference between number 6 and number 1 is barely anything in this game, as honestly the classes are all really well balanced compared to a lot of other games out there, and so despite having its flaws and coming in at number 6, the X-Wing is definitely not a bad starfighter by any means. Now, coming in at the number 5 spot, and don't hate me for this because I know for a fact some people are going to absolutely lose their mind, but for me, the TIE Interceptor does fill that 5th spot. Again, I need to clarify, the difference between 5th and 1st is barely anything at all, but for me personally, the TIE Interceptor does come in a little bit lower than where I imagine most people would probably have it. The reason for this is that its combination of lower health as well as the fact that they have no shields does just make them feel extremely weak in a few situations, and unfortunately if the enemy team has a bomber with the beam cannon or even an X-Wing with the auto-aim weapon, then no matter how fast and agile these things are, they can just be cannon fodder to any of those weapons that make it a little bit easier to lock onto enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, despite their lack of health, the TIE Interceptors are still absolutely awesome in this game. Their agility really does make up for the lack of health in a lot of cases, since they can obviously outmaneuver their enemies more often than not, and they deal a heap of damage as well, so if you're a good enough pilot then they can feel unstoppable so long as those auto-aim weapons aren't being spammed on the other team. It was definitely pretty hard to pick it all the way down at number 5, but despite that, the TIE Interceptor is still a very useful starfighter. Coming in at number 4 we have another TIE, this being the regular TIE Fighter. This is probably my main class to use for the Imperials. I've been really enjoying the TIE Fighter for a while now, and I feel like they just have the edge over the TIE Interceptors. The little bit of extra health that the TIE has over the Interceptor is the main reason that I personally prefer them in most cases, and in terms of the base weapons and stuff like that, I definitely think the Interceptor is actually better, just going by the vanilla build of the Starfighters anyway. But when you add a little bit of extra health to the TIE and give it those auto aim burst weapons, I personally feel like that does give it the edge over the TIE Interceptor. The maneuverability is also a big factor between these two as well. However, honestly, I think the fighter class isn't all that much less agile than the Interceptor class, mainly due to the fact that you can boost drift for added agility anyway, and so for me that kind of balances all of that out as well, leaving the TIE pretty close to even with the Interceptor, but just having more health, which adds to its survivability. This was a very hard one to rank, honestly. 4th and 5th could probably be swapped around either way and would still feel like the right choice in a way, but I think just for me personally that the TIE does deserve the spot at number 4. Now, coming in at number 3, we have another Interceptor, which is of course the A-Wing. The reason I rate this one just a little bit higher than the TIE Interceptor is simply because of the fact that the A-Wing has shields, which just adds to their survivability. Now, granted, the shield strength isn't amazing by any means, and I believe they actually have slightly less hull health due to the fact that they do have shields as well, so it's not like it makes a drastic difference or anything like that, but I definitely think that it's just enough of a difference to make it noticeable between the two different Interceptors. Their insane damage output, as well as some other awesome features like reversing enemy rockets and stuff like that, it all fits their playstyle really well, and if the pilot is good enough, then these can definitely be one of the more dominant classes in the game. Their biggest weakness is definitely attacking capital ships or frigates. They do tend to get absolutely melted in those situations, but for the most part, if you just stick to dogfighting enemy starfighters and leave those other objectives to the bombers, then you will do very well in an A-Wing. Now, coming in at number 2, we have the TIE Bomber, and these absolutely took me by surprise in this game, because honestly, leading into launch, I thought the Bomber class would be arguably one of the worst classes in the game. The TIE Bomber is by far the tankiest class for the Imperials, which is obviously how it's meant to be, but for me personally, I honestly feel like they're even tankier than they should be. They just seem to eat damage for breakfast, and nothing really tends to get in their way, no matter how much you throw at them. Their forward shield component is also amazing when it comes to attacking capital ships. If you throw that shield on and head in with the intent to deal as much damage as you can to the capital ships, then you're going to have an absolutely awesome time doing so. Even if you end up dying, you're going to deal insane amounts of damage to those subsystems and help your team bring home the win. Now, lastly, coming in at the number 1 spot, we have the other bomber, this one of course being the Y-Wing. Honestly, the only difference between these two is that the Y-Wing does have the shields that can often make it feel a little bit more tanky than the TIE Bomber, and pretty much everything I just said about the TIE Bomber does relate to the Y-Wing as well. The thing with these bombers is that they're not only great at their main role, which is obviously to deal damage to the capital ships, but they can also dominate in dogfights too, which is something that I just really did not expect heading into the game. Their beam cannon component is easily the most powerful regular weapon in the game. Not only does it seem to fire forever, but it literally has auto aim as well. So if you can just manage to stay relatively on target, then you're going to find yourself getting a ton of kills, let alone all of the damage that you can deal to those capital ships as well. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. This was super hard to rank, honestly, as like I said, they're all so well balanced, and the difference between each spot is barely a difference at all. But either way, let me know down in the comments whether you agree or disagree with the rankings as I have them. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.